Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams, broadcasting live from iHeart headquarters right here in New York City. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on the brain in a way that we've never done so before. Our headliner is Brain, Balance, and Breakthroughs. We're going to meet the minds behind A Moment of Zen's newest segments. That's right, debuting right here on our show. We have a powerhouse father-daughter duo kicking off the Brain Blueprint and the Right Brain segments. And here's why this matters. Right now, nearly 1 in 36 children in the U.S. are diagnosed with autism, and ADHD diagnoses have jumped more than 40% in the past decade. But these aren't just numbers. They're stories lived out every single day, and they're now front and center in our culture. Celebrities from Simone Biles to Greta Thunberg, from Justin Timberlake to Adam Levine, have all been open about living with ADHD and autism. Oscar-winning Emma Stone has shared her lifelong struggles with anxiety, and musician Grimes recently revealed her autism and ADHD diagnoses. These public confessions remind us of something vital. Neurodiversity and mental health aren't outliers. They're part of the human condition. That's why tonight we're launching 2 powerful new segments that are now going to live inside A Moment of Zen. The Brain Blueprint, co-created alongside Dr. Robert Melillo, a world-renowned brain researcher, clinician, and pioneer in functional neurology. He's the developer of the Melillo method, the co-founder of the Brain Balance Centers, and an 8-time best-selling author of books like Disconnected Kids. Now, for decades, he's helped families navigate ADHD, autism, and learning challenges with science-driven, non-pharmaceutical therapies. And The Right Brain, a derivative of the acclaimed Right Brain podcast, co-hosted by Dr. Melillo and his daughter, Ellis Melillo, who is in studio with us tonight. Ellis is a singer-songwriter, a storyteller, bringing creativity and culture into the conversation about wellness and mental health. Together, they're changing the narrative around how we see the brain, both scientifically and artistically. So tonight, we're not just talking about the brain, we're talking about brains, balance, and breakthroughs. Welcome to the show, superstars.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Quite an introduction.
Yeah, that was
thank you
really
very
nice.
Much. I was excited to listen.
So, Dr. Melillo, let's begin with you. The CDC now estimates that 1 in 36 children are diagnosed with autism, and ADHD has surged by more than 40% in the past decade. What do you believe is fueling these numbers? Is it a true rise in cases, or are we simply just getting better at recognizing what's always been there?
My third book, Autism, the Scientific Truth, I really investigated this for quite a time. And it was very clear that what we're seeing is an actual increase in numbers, what's called an increase in incidence, not just prevalence, meaning we're not just statistically noting more people and recognizing it more. There's an actual increase of these issues, which really speaks to, what is actually causing it. And really the bottom line, though, is my work is all about what does it actually mean? What is actually happening in the brain in these issues? Before you can actually start to look at causation or any of those things, you have to understand, well, what is the problem? What's happening in the brain? And then you can start looking at what might be causing it and what we can do to actually change it.
Yeah, that's such an important distinction, because it helps parents realize these aren't isolated cases, and the brain is adapting to modern pressures, and knowledge like this is truly power. So I'm really excited about both these segments within our show. I'm going to pivot to you, Alice. So according to the World Health Organization, people in creative industries are twice as likely to struggle with depression or anxiety. It's not like that's a newsflash. But artists like Lady Gaga and Demi Lovato have really shown that being transparent about those struggles can fuel advocacy and artistry at the same time. So with the Right Brain segment, how do you hope to normalize mental health for creatives, reframing it as a strength, not a liability?
Yeah, I think I want to make it just educate everyone kind of on how their brain is working. That's why I started this podcast with my dad, because I moved to Nashville and I'm a singer-songwriter, and I have always struggled with anxiety and depression and OCD. And when I moved to a town that was so saturated with like all of these really talented people, but they seemed to all be struggling with the same thing. Luckily, I grew up with this as my dad. So,
Yeah.
He's kind of talked me down from a lot of things and explained to me like what was actually going on in my brain. But nobody else seemed to have access to that. So I was like, why don't I use this amazing resource that I have And then coming from the emotional side of things and understanding what's actually going on in the brains of all of these people I'm working with. And then he can explain how you can help yourself. So I'm hoping to just kind of educate everyone and let them know it's not permanent.
And I love that you wanted to educate everyone using your secret weapon, which is dad.
I know, yeah.
Now, Dr. Melillo, you've long said that brain imbalances can underlie conditions like ADHD and autism. And studies show, in fact, that the hemispheric imbalances can affect everything from attention span to mood regulation. And Temple Grandin, one of the most famous autistic voices, has said the world needs all kinds of minds. So how can parents spot these imbalances early, and how will the brain blueprint, if you will, help families intervene before challenges become crisis?
The important thing that I tell people, and this is where it really overlaps with a lot of Ellis's work and the people she works with, is it really starts with a gift. That when somebody is just genetically gifted, meaning that it's a trait, and these traits run in families. Like we know autism is more common, that in their families they have mathematicians and physicists and engineers, or people in the financial world, or people that work in the IT industry. This has been well documented. It's a trait. What is that trait? To me, it's a left brain dominant style of thinking. And in the creative world, we know that, the more creative you are, the more talented you are, the more you are likely to suffer from bipolar or depression, which is a more of a right brain dominant trait. So it's about understanding that, these gifts also come with these vulnerabilities, but they can be changed. You can recognize them, and you can do that without taking away the gift, but you can help improve whatever struggles or challenges may be there by knowing about these imbalances and how to change that.
Yeah, and you said it spot on. Early detection and even distinction, right? And early action can literally rewrite the story for a child. And that's what makes this segment so powerful. Now, Ellis, Gen Z consumes more mental health content on TikTok from licensed professionals than anyone I know. And creators like Paige Lail, she's an autistic influencer with over 1 million followers. She's making neurodiversity mainstream, right? So do you see the right brain segment as a way to reclaim that narrative when you're combining creativity with credibility to meet young people where they are?
Yes, absolutely. Because I think it's an absolutely amazing thing that people have been talking about it so openly. And I think a lot of the memes and videos are really funny. My dad and I send them back and forth to each other. But some of them just are a touch misguided. Like, I don't know, someone will be like, oh, I touch this all the time and that means I'm autistic or that whatever. And it's not actually
right
the truth. They're trying to find the answer, but they don't know what the answer is. And then it creates sort of this false narrative of like what autism means or what it means to have ADHD or what it means to have OCD. And people are like, oh, I relate to that. That must mean I'm autistic too. But it's like, they need to have the actual facts behind it and not just a viral video. But I do think it's a great thing that it's becoming something that's spoken about so much. But yeah, I would like for us to give kind of guidance with that.
So Dr. Robert Melillo, taking me to a recent MIT study, showed that adult brains have far more neuroplasticity than we once believed. So that means rewiring doesn't stop in childhood. It continues well into adulthood. I didn't really understand this until I researched it, thanks to you. So for families who may feel it's too late, right? How transformative is this finding? Could it change how we approach ADHD, autism, or even recovery from brain injury?
Well, it's huge because over and over, and again, one of the misstatements or misinterpretations that a lot of people get that Ellis was just talking about is that people get a diagnosis and they're told this is a lifelong issue and there's nothing you can do about it. But neuroplasticity speaks to the complete opposite of that. And as you said, we're learning more and more that the brain is more plastic than we ever thought. To later and later ages, even into our 80s and 90s, we can change our brain. So the fact is that, again, almost all, 90% or more, of adult mental health issues start in childhood. So they're all developmental. And what happens is anything that alters the growth and development in the brain early on can lead to these imbalances, especially people that are very gifted in certain areas. But that can be changed at any given time. So that's the important thing. And that's why that MIT study is really important, because the idea that these are genetic disorders purely that they're genetic mutations isn't true. There isn't really an autism gene or a dyslexia gene or the depression gene. There are traits that underlie them, but these things can be changed when they're understood more.
Now, Ellis, the entertainment industry has really long glamorized the quote unquote tortured artist, but data shows creatives face a 2 to 3 times higher risk, and this is true, of substance abuse than the general population. So as someone straddling music and advocacy, how can the right brain segments dismantle that myth and instead spotlight healthier models of creative success?
Well, I think as my dad said earlier, everything starts with having a gift. And I think the tortured artist is a lot of being a very right brain person is that it is your gift because you can write a song and people be like, my God, how did you understand exactly what I was feeling? And so that is the gift that you can feel emotions stronger than other people. You can, read the most subtle facial expressions. You can feel other people's emotions, when someone calls themselves an empath. And all of that is your gift, but it's also a burden to carry. And I think a lot of people are tortured artists because they feel very lonely in that. And I've noticed that with a lot of artists. It's a very lonely thing to be an artist.
Yeah.
And I think that those people, even though they're helping other people so much understand themselves, they don't quite understand themselves, and it's painful. And I don't think they think they can change that. So with this podcast, I want people to feel unique, obviously, but I want them to know that they're not alone in their thoughts. And you don't have to go to substance abuse for that, because that's kind of what drives it, is to take drugs to kind of just calm all of those extra feelings that you have.
Now, Dr. Melillo, policy is shifting too, right? We have RFK Jr. He recently called for a ban on artificial food dyes, citing links to hyperactivity and behavioral issues in kids. So from your perspective, how significant is this step? And do you believe regulation should play a bigger role in safeguarding children's brain health?
I think it's very important. I mean, I think any parent or anybody that's been around, you look at the obesity level, you look at the overall health level of not just children, but adults in our country. And it's really shameful the way, where we are. We should be the healthiest country in the world, and we're not. We're one of the most unhealthy. And that is obviously impacting our children. And we do know, a lot of what RFK is saying about environmental factors driving the epidemic or the dramatic increase we see in things like obesity and diabetes and autism and ADHD is absolutely correct. In my third book, Autism, the Scientific Truth, I published that in 2013. I was the first person that wrote a book about preventing these developmental disabilities and understanding that these are being driven by environment and by lifestyle, primarily lifestyle,
right,
which means we can change that, right? We just have to be more aware of it. And again, I'm not big on regulations of things, but I think education, doing things like this, making people more aware, but in some cases with companies and corporations stepping in and saying, no, you can't use this dye anymore.
Right.
Especially when the rest of the world isn't using it. It just makes common sense. And I think it's some really good steps, actually.
Yeah, that's a critical point, because no matter how proactive parents are, systemic change is needed if we want to protect developing brains. And I think we're headed in the right direction finally, but we still have a very long way to go. So Ellis, as we launch this new journey with the Right Brain segment, and you've been on this incredible road with the Right Brain podcast already, but I'm so excited to fold it into our show. What's the one takeaway message you want our listeners to hold on to about creativity and wellness, or the way we see mental health going into 2026?
I just want people to hear this and be like, oh, that sounds like me. And just know that all of these things can be fixed. I was kind of embarrassed when we first started our podcast before I started having guests on. It was like every episode I was like, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have this. And I named all of these things that I've been struggling with that I haven't ever really been that open about. And
right,
the amount of people that have sent us messages just saying I relate to all the things you're saying has made such a difference, and it's been healing for me as well. So I want the message to be, you're not alone. These are all strengths that you have, but they can all be improved. And just how my dad works with kids with autism that are more left brain strong, I'm more right brain strong, and you find a balance. You don't take away any of your gifts, but you can improve yourself all around.
Now, let's get a little bonus question in here, Dr. Melillo. So RFK has also been outspoken on autism and vaccines, sparking intense national debate. And as one of the most respected voices in functional neurology, what's your take? How should parents navigate this polarized conversation without fear, but with clarity?
It is fairly complex, but I will say this, that I understand because I have many families. I mean, I just saw families today, and almost every one of them said, after my child was vaccinated, I saw a change in them.
Oh.
So there is no doubt that vaccines may play a role in making the symptoms worse, but they do not cause autism. And the reason why I say that is that obviously if they were the cause of autism, then everybody that was ever vaccinated would have autism. And that's not the case, right? So even people that are the staunchest, anti-vaccine from that standpoint, when you make that statement, they say the same thing. They go, yeah, okay, you're right. But it's still, there's something about these kids that makes them susceptible to it.
But is that a gene mutation that makes them
No,
susceptible?
it's not. And so that's the thing. It's this brain imbalance, this developmental imbalance that creates an imbalance in something called the sympathetic and parasympathetic system and shifts their immune system and makes their immune system overreactive and overproduce antibodies so that when you do give them a vaccine, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
But that can be changed, and it is not the cause of it. The issue was already there, even before the first vaccine, which, we know that happens on day 2, essentially. But, now those vaccines also may have an impact on the parents later on and things like that. But so I understand where he's coming from, and I understand, I think RFK, for the most part, is moving in the right direction. I just think that he needs people advising him that know a little bit more about the brain. And right now...
Yeah, that would be a good start.
Yeah, I think people know about the body and the immune system, and they're looking at it from that perspective, from that biomedical perspective. But the people in the biomedical and functional medicine world, which I am part of and I teach, they don't know really anything about the brain and the nervous system, and especially the developing brain. So
yeah, he's made some pretty big claims in the last couple of weeks about, finding the root cause of autism, and we're identifying it. I mean, there's been some headliners.
Right. But you first have to understand what autism is
right.
before you can understand the root cause. And I don't think that anybody around him really has that clarity right now.
Yeah, that's exactly, that kind of grounded, evidence-based clarity. That's what families need from you. It cuts through the noise and brings focus back to what truly matters, protecting and empowering children, not fluff, right? So everything you just said there was priceless. And that kind of wraps up our first date. I mean, I could keep going. We're just getting started 30 minutes in here, but I'm so excited that Brains, Balance, and Breakthroughs, we're going to be launching the Brain Blueprint with the two of you, and I'm so excited to have you on board. And, of course, the Right Brain segment, that's one of my favorite tie-ins, especially bridging that community with artists right back into the scientific conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we're so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're very excited. We're very grateful for you to, give this platform to your audience. Yeah. And you do such a great job of also describing it and bringing clarity in that. So we're really excited about this. We can't wait to move forward and really just help people and change the narrative, as you said.
Thank you to our listeners, and you can keep exploring these conversations. And, of course, to our viewers, you could go directly to his website at drmelillo.com, and you can check out the Right Brain Podcast, spelled WRITE, the rightbrainpodcast.com. You can follow both of them on the gram at Dr. Robert Melillo and at Velvet Ellis _. This is just the beginning. Together, we're going to be reshaping how families and communities think about the brain, making science, creativity, and wellness not just accessible, but transformational. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.